liberty. This is a big box. I know what's in it, but I don't. Money shot. Okay, at the time of recording, I actually have no idea what's in this box. This is the first time I've seen it. Oh my lord! Oh my god, it was real all along! Okay, we do have new plastic Mark 6. They look very big. Those legs look ridiculous. Why are the legs so long? Okay, here we go. It is a very big box. It is slightly taller than the Indomitus box set and the Dominion box set. The grand reveal. Ooh! Hell yeah. Wow, that is packed. Plastic Contemptor. A proper one. Not snap fit by the looks of it. And then we got a plastic Spartan. I've never been so excited for basically a Land Raider in forever. Okay, then we got the rule book. Oh boy, that is thick AF. All the unit profiles as well. Praetor with axe. Unit type infantry character. It looks like 7th edition, but there's some quite subtle changes like movement. Contemptor Dreadnought. Oh, so the Dreadnought has toughness. Toughness 7, move 8, 5 wounds. Tactical squad. They have 1 wound. Sag. Land Raider Spartan. Interesting. So the Spartan has armor values, but the Dreadnought has a toughness value. Unit type Dreadnought, that makes sense. And unit type vehicle. So you got like all the new rules for the weapons. So you got like Gravis Lads Cannon, Heavy 2 Twin Link. Oh man, I've not seen so many of these rules in so long. What does twin linked mean? This is just nostalgia 101. I don't know what any of these words mean anymore. In addition, the unit includes any models with cataphractite terminator or may not make sweeping advances. I don't know what sweeping advance is anymore. It's been a while since I first opened the box. The whole reason that we were sent a box is that because myself and Georgie were invited along with a whole bunch of other content creators to paint up either a Legion or a Primarch for the big reveal at the Horus Heresy Warhammer Fest Day. Me and Georgie were kindly offered to paint up the Iron Hands because, you know, memes.
Red Hands. We're playing, yeah, Red Hands. I'm playing my Blood Ravens as Minotaurs in Iron Hands. This is going to make sense later.
You've almost got as many chapters as I have.
And we were invited by Games Workshop to the event itself, as well as having tours around the Warhammer Plus studios, and also being given a demo game of Age of Darkness 2. Or Age of Dark, it's called the Age of Darkness, but... Now, there's a detailed painting video about the trials and tribulations of painting an Iron Hands army for this event when you've never painted Iron Hands before, and that's coming soon. But this video is going to be focusing on the demo game that I had at Warhammer World with this new rule set. In this demo game, myself and Georgie teamed up using the Imperial Fists to take on the devious Cult of Paint's very own Andy and Henry, and they were using the Sons of Horus. To be clear and upfront, Games Workshop sent me a box for free, which included this rule set, and they also invited myself and Georgie down and paid for the trip to go around Warhammer Plus Studio to get the demo game and go to the event itself. So whilst they haven't written the script for this video, Games Workshop did check this video before it went public. Also, I really love Games Workshop and all of their products. Now, I'm going to be talking about this rule set from my own experience as a long-time 40k player. So I may reference things like 7th edition 40k, because back then, both Horus Heresy and 40k shared the same rule set. You just used different models in each game. Since then, I know it had updates between 40k becoming 8th edition and today, but I didn't really play it in between those periods, so I'm mostly going to be going off really old Horus Heresy, which is the same but just a little bit different in some places. It was essentially like an FAQ'd version of 7th edition 40k as far as I'm aware. It's had its updates since then, but this rule set feels very familiar. However, it kind of feels like they've stripped it back to the very core of itself and rebuilt it from the ground up, which if you did play 7th edition back in the day, you knew it needed. This core rulebook is massive, as you can see, it's quite a tome, but a lot of it is actually lore from the game, which is cool, and only a third of it is made up by core rules, with a few glamour shots in between before laying out the missions and how you play the game on like what board size and stuff like that. Which is on 6x4, by the way. Why, Games Workshop? Why is it not small? But whilst it looks quite imposing, something that Winter said on my live stream when I interviewed him about this was quite interesting and really struck home with me.
So it is a very large rule book. It is 7th ed, and that's how big it was. But you've got to remember that all those extra pages that you get in the 9th ed rule book
Very true, very true.
Codexes are not there. They're all just in the rulebook. What you have is
I
data
didn't even
sheets.
consider that. That's very true.
You have data sheets and army special rules. That's it.
Yeah.
So you just need the core rulebook, and essentially all those things that are spread across 50 codexes. Excuse me. It is thicker at the first pass, but it's smaller overall.
That's true. I didn't really consider that when I was like looking at it. I was just like, this is a very scary book.
Yeah.
It's very big. I don't know when I'll read this, and I just had to break it down. But
Well, 50 or 60 pages of them are the USRs, and USRs are basically keyword. What does Deflagrate do? What does Eternal Warrior do? What does Blast do? We know Blast. You know Vehicle.
Yeah.
These are keywords that are in there, and there's 50, 60 pages of keywords. Take that out, and the rulebook actually shrinks in half.
So actually it doesn't feel like that much. Now, this doesn't have any unit profiles or army rules outside of fortification profiles, which are essentially buildings that you can buy as part of your army and put in your list for your army to hunker down in. But Games Workshop have announced 2 more tomes, one for the goodies or the loyalists and one for the baddies, also the heretics or the traitors, which will be coming out. And they kind of look like codex / army book type books for the 2 main factions. I'm sure we'll see something similar for the other factions that haven't yet been mentioned. So how does it play? And I'm going to put this down because I feel like I'm going to break something with it. As I mentioned, it's going to feel very familiar to old Heresy players, and to a traditional wargamer it's going to be quite old school and quite normal. Each player is going to take a turn, and each turn is broken down into multiple phases. You have a movement phase where you move your models around the battlefield. You have a shooting phase where you take your mass firearms and gun down all the undesirables. You have an assault phase where you charge into glorious combat to beat down the undesirables with rudimentary weapons like swords and hammers, but with power, like power swords. And finally, the 4th phase of the game is the end of turn phase, which I guess is a phase, but not really. This is essentially where you do a load of bookkeeping, you do your mission scoring, and then pass over the turn to your opponent. For veteran players, you may notice there is no mention of a psychic phase, and we'll go into psychics in a little bit. Now, where this game really deviates from its predecessor is reactions, and you've probably heard of these already because it's all people keep talking about. Normally, in a game of Warhammer with alternating turns, or in any war game for that matter with alternating turns, you have one player moving, shooting, glorious combat, and the other player is kind of sat watching, like grasping on to attentiveness while they essentially roll saves and remove models and don't really have anything else to do. Maybe fight back in combat if that comes up, but mostly rolling saves and removing models. But no more. It seems that the writers of the Age of Darkness have taken tips from the Age of Sigmar instead and added a bunch of tactical ploys for the non-active player to use to kind of mess with your opponent while they're moving, while they're shooting, while they're fighting, to try and screw with their plans and being able to be interactive in both turns of the game rather than just one. So no longer are you just going to be sat there rolling saves, because every phase of your opponent's turn you can interact. There's actually 6 core reactions, 2 for each phase, and then some more advanced reactions as well. You have a reaction allotment which starts at 1 per phase for each player, so you can do 1 reaction per phase, and you can choose from the 2 core ones that are available. Now it talks of adding more to your reaction. Now it talks about adding more to your reaction allotment, such as warlord traits it mentions, but there's nothing available so far in the core rulebook, so I'm sure we'll see something like that in the Legion, the Astartes, big army book thingy. Movement phase reactions are pretty simple. You move towards me, well I'm just going to move further away. Or I'm feeling really ballsy, you move towards me, I'm going to move closer. Bring it. Once the guns start blazing in the shooting phase, once you're shot, you can either try and evade it and try and survive the attack, or you can just turn at them, see that they're loading their guns, you can load your guns right back, and we just shoot each other at the same time, which is actually really fun. Once they're charging at you for glorious combat, you can try and gun them down like the dirty traitorous dogs they are, or you can hold the line like Jon Snow at the Battle of the Bastards and hope for the best. Now all of them have their pros and cons, and they are just 6 of the core reactions. Obviously I mentioned that there are advanced reactions, but there isn't many mentioned in the rulebook except for the one known as Interceptor. And essentially what it seems like is that advanced reactions are reactions that are just really specific compared to like core reactions. Now, something that was mentioned in the demo game, because we didn't use any Legion specific rules in our game, we just played with just the models out of the box played against each other. But something that was mentioned is that Legions are going to have their own specific advanced reactions, which are almost game breaking, I was told. However, they are once per battle rather than being every phase. So whilst it might be really good, once per battle really limits it. So it should be interesting once we do get these tomes to see what they are for each Legion, and then we can really start to see how this game's going to be played. The reaction aspect is the thing that most people are talking about because it is arguably the largest fundamental change from the previous rule set and largest change from most Warhammer rule sets that they write. Obviously, they've taken tips from Age of Sigmar, and you could say, if you really wanted to like put this in a nutshell, is that Horus Heresy 2 is Horus Heresy but with Age of Sigmar reactions, which is right, but obviously it misses so many important things. But this is such a large change for the game that it's going to be really important, and it is going to impact the entire playstyle of every single army, because the game just feels so much different with this. And it's a really good way to keep both players engaged throughout the game rather than just one turn, you know? Oh, it's your opponent's turn, I'm going to go for a pee, I'm going to go for a beer, you know? Yeah, we get less beer time, however, we get to play the game for longer rather than being stood there for 3 hours and only spending an hour and a half each in it.
In it.
I need to stop saying it. It's hurting me.
Saying it a lot.
So with one massive change, that might be quite scary, but there's also a lot of familiarity with the rule set, as I've mentioned. There's a whole host of Universal Special Rules, or USRs for short, which from what I can tell, mostly feel the same. There's obviously been some tweaks. There'll be some tweaks that I haven't even noticed. There's some tweaks because of the way the game interacts now, but largely feel the same. You still have Shrouded, you still have Armor Bane, you still have Melter, etc. Weapons still have a strength that compare against a toughness value on a chart to work out what you need to wound, and armor penetration works the same way, either doing completely nothing or outright ignoring an armor save if it's equal to or lower than an armor save that a unit has. It also makes damaging vehicles much better. Speaking of vehicles, tread heads are going to be really happy because armor values and firing arcs are still in the game, along with templates and scatter dice for better or for worse. But one huge change for a vehicle type is dreadnoughts and automators, where these are vehicles, but they actually have a toughness value. Now again, for old guard players, this is going to make dreadnoughts and automators feel very much like monstrous creatures. However, they're going to be largely immune to flesh bane, but probably come off a little bit worse against anti-tank weapons such as chain fists and melters, where they get outright reroll wounds against them now. So whilst dreadnoughts on paper look very, very strong and very durable compared to what they used to be, they also look like they're coming off a little bit worse against the right armaments. As I've mentioned, I'm pretty sure another fundamental change is how Psychic works in the game and how Psychers interact. Gone are the days of mastery levels and Winds of the Warp and rolling a bunch of dice to try and get a bunch of successes to cast powers. I honestly don't know if that changed from 5 years ago. It might have, it might not have, but Psychic just feels way simpler. Is it a Psychic shooting attack? Well, shoot it in the shooting phase, but it's Psychic. Is it a melee weapon that you fathom up from your mind and it's a giant flaming sword that comes down and smites your foes? Well, that's great. Use it in the combat phase or in the assault phase, but it's Psychic. Now, it does mention psychic tests or psychic checks, which is essentially rolling 2d6 and hoping to roll underneath your leadership. If it's successful, it might make the weapon or shooting attack even better than it was if you would just use it normally. Some require you to use a psychic check or pass a psychic check for it actually to work, or you can't use it at all. Now, all you gotta do is hope you don't roll over your leadership value, or your head might just get blown off and you'll spend the rest of eternity in that dark place that no one wants to go to, called the Warp. Now, compared to 7th edition, which Heresy might have played it this way for years, but who knows. From 7th edition, this just feels so much more fluid and so much quicker and so much easier. Like, well, first impression, Psychic feels way less impactful, but still has a lot of flavor. I guess this is going to be like really reflected in like the points cost of a unit if it is a Psychic compared to something that's very, very similar but isn't a Psyker. And it also depends if the legions or the heretic legions will get like unique powers. Again, I don't know. I'm just guessing, but there are some in the core rulebook which seem quite fun. But that's kind of what you want. You want it to retain flavor but keep the game moving. And that's probably the biggest thing. I've just gone over 3 large fundamental changes of the rule set, but you clicked on this video because you wanted to know how it plays. And it's just that. It feels a little bit more fluid than days gone by. The Age of Darkness lost a lot of its popularity, in my opinion, because it was kind of left in the dark age in terms of rule set. Get it? Built on rules that were first made popular like 30 years ago with 2nd edition 40k. And whilst it held up at the time, it kind of feels like years of rules bloat and tweaking it to bring it into a modern audience and adding some unit types and adding this and adding that and doing this and this and this. Once 40k left that rule set and became its own thing 5 years ago, it kind of seemed from the outside that it was left to its own devices with a couple of new releases here and there to keep the heartbeat going whilst they finish releasing all of the Primarchs, and then they can like redo it all at once. Now though, it definitely looks way more interesting. On the one hand, it's still based on that same rule set from 1993, really. At its core, it is the same style of game. So Old Guard fans are going to feel really familiar and they're going to really find their feet quite quickly, and the game's going to make sense. And in that same breath, the way to make sense, it's kind of like a lot of interactions have been changed to just be simpler. Like, why did we have an entire movement phase to move every single unit up to its movement characteristic, end our movement phase, go into a shooting phase, and then decide one by one whether we wanted to run a unit an additional d6 and move them again? Like, why did we have that in 2 different phases? Why didn't we just say, okay, this unit's going to run and it's going to move an additional d6, so when I pick it up, it moves once, but it moves that further distance. Also, it feels like they've just got rid of arbitrary rolling. They're just like, why are we rolling to see how far it moves? Just move it its initiative value. That's it. Save the dice for the good fun bits like shooting and combat. And that's one hurdle I think Games Workshop are trying to get over with this new rule set. It's kind of trying to take a rule set that people know and love, make it feel the same, but also streamline it at the same time. And when I say streamline, I don't mean simplify. They haven't made this game simple. They've just made it make more sense and make some interactions just make more sense. But by streamlining it in this way, they make it play a little bit quicker, and it feels a little bit more welcoming to new players because things just interact as you'd kind of expect as a wargamer. And that's ultimately what we want. We want swaths of new people, you know, fresh blood to come into our gaming store so we can push them under our ceramic boots. So that's what I'm kind of trying to say, you know. This game at its core is Horus Heresy. It's the same rule set you know and love. It's Age of Darkness 1 with universal special rules, with templates, with armor facings, with firing arcs, but stripped back to its core and rewritten in a modern age that just kind of makes more sense because the language is progressed for 30 years, and you can see that throughout all of the rules. Ultimately though, I've not seen any of the unit profiles outside of the units that are in the Age of Darkness box set, and it looks like everything's getting redone from the ground up. Obviously dreadnoughts don't have armor values anymore, and there's a lot more granularity with unit profiles by having a movement characteristic added on. So everything has its own movement characteristic. Rather than infantry move 6, Space Marines move 7, and Terminators move 6 because they're chunky. Also, they've done the same with wounds as well. They've added 2 wounds to Terminators, so if you fail a save against a bolter, you'd lose a Space Marine, but now you don't just lose a Terminator as well. It'll take a single wound, and having that will they'll be able to like spread out the units and make them feel more unique in themselves, and that's only going to be good for lots of different unit types feeling different. From the very little amount I've played, I've obviously read this book now. I've read it a good chunk, and I feel like I've got quite a good understanding of the game. It seems really fun, but we've only seen a smidge because I don't know what the other units do. But I am excited to try and find out. But that's it. Are you a Heresy player? Are you excited to try things out like the reactions? Are you an old fan like me who is getting sucked back in because the Primarchs are fucking awesome? Or are you brand new? Have you ever played Heresies before? Have you ever played a war game before? And is this taking your fancy? Well, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to get a conversation going. And if you really want to continue the conversation, you can always join our Discord. We have Horus Heresy channels in there now for like-minded people to talk about this new game. I want to thank you to all our YouTube members. They support the channel like so much. I can't thank them all enough. They really literally make it possible, and they support me to make videos like this and make more videos in the future. As I said, there's an Iron Hands painting video being edited as we speak, But that's it. Thanks for watching. I love you all. Subscribe, like, and bye for now.